So I have some more copies for those that don't have the copies from before. So we have enough. Let's see how many we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I hate you being really like whenever you're made.
Okay, so yesterday we were on page 12, and that was the page that speaks about Kavod Tamid Chachamim, the honor, the respect that we have to have towards Torah scholars. And today we'll do page 13, which is related. So let me mention again what we started the conversation with, and that leads into 12 and 13. In the Mishnah it said, and it compares a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, to fire. In fact, Hashem himself is compared to fire. There's a pasuk, a verse in the Torah where it says God is a consuming fire. And again, the story we're reading now about Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem appeared to him the first time, he appeared in the form of a fire. Neshama, which is a soul, fire. So it says that the soul of candle of God is the soul of man. Again, connection to fire. And there are many other verses and sources that make that connection. So in the Mishnah, it says that, let's look at fire. Fire is something that if you stay far away from it, you won't benefit. But if you get too close, you might get hurt. So you have to keep a respectful distance, but at the same time, you have to be close if you want to benefit from the light and from the warmth. The same is with Torah scholars or anything that's holy. If you want to benefit from it, you have to come close. But coming close means in a respectful way, you just have to keep a certain distance. Because if you get too close, it means too casual to the point that you're not so respectful and more dismissive and not really realizing that you're in the presence of something which is holy or someone that's holy, then it could be something that would actually hurt you. And we gave a few examples yesterday. So yesterday we spoke about one side of the coin, which is the respect. Today we'll talk about the other side of the coin, which is to attach yourself to a tzaddik. So actually something which many people are not aware of, we all know there are 613 mitzvahs, 613 commandments. One of the commandments are you should attach yourself to Hashem. So I want to give this out. You'll see the source, what that means. Yeah, you don't mind to pass it around. Thank you. It's a pasuk, a verse, what? It's found in Tanya, right? But the source from Tanya is a pasuk in Chumash and Rashi and Gemara that speak about this pasuk. So here it is. I'm looking at the side of the page that says on top, Devarim, Deuteronomy, page 130. And let's wait till everybody gets a copy. Meantime, I'll do the attendance. Today is Thursday. Where did the week go? It was just Thursday, a week ago. Okay, so at the top of the page, you have the pasuk where it says, You should observe the mitzvah that I am commanding you to perform, to love Hashem, your God, to walk in his ways. And the last thing is, and to attach yourself to him. Now, once you say to walk in his ways, what does it mean to attach yourself to him? If you're walking in his ways, you're doing the right thing. What else is there to do? What does it mean to attach yourself to him? So let's look at Rashi. And as we know, everything Rashi says comes from the Gemara, from the Talmud. You attach yourself to him. Rashi says, is it possible to say this? Isn't he a consuming fire? Hashem is a fire. How could you attach yourself to a fire? So the answer is, you should cling and attach yourself to the sages and the disciples of the sages. I will consider it as if you've attached yourself to Hashem himself. In other words, the way to attach yourself to Hashem is by attaching yourself to people that are godly people. It's like saying you should be attached, you should immerse yourself in Torah study. So we're supposed to be connected to Hashem and to Torah, or to Torah and Hashem. How does it work? The answer is it's not two separate things. Torah is Hashem's Torah, and by connecting, investing ourselves in the Torah, we are connecting to Hashem. If you see a person meeting their friend outside in the street, in the middle of the winter, and they embrace their friend that they just met, and you walk over to them and you say, could you explain me something? It was very strange. I saw you embracing your friend's coat. Like, what was that all about? So my friend's coat. Yes, I saw you embracing the coat. Not the person, the coat. Yeah, but there was a person in the coat. Did you ever hear people talk that way? I met my friend, I embraced their coat, but don't worry, they were inside the coat. Actually, they were inside a sweater and inside a coat. No one talks like that. It's understood when you're embracing the coat. It's not the coat, it's the person. Torah is Hashem's garment. The Beit HaMikdash, when people walked in there, and even today, by the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, when a Yid comes to Eretz Yisrael, they bend down and they kiss the ground, because the ground is holy ground. What does it mean? This is a garment where Hashem's presence is found. So Torah is a garment, mitzvahs are garment, tefillin are garments. When you walk in a shul, when they bring the Torah scroll, everybody runs to kiss it. Why are we kissing a piece of cloth? It's not a piece of cloth. This is a cloth, and this is something that has Hashem's presence in it. And the same is with tzaddikim. The righteous people, the tzaddikim, because they're so devoted to Hashem, so therefore, when we attach ourselves to them, we're in essence attaching ourselves to Hashem, to the godliness that's in them, to the godly light that's shining in them. That's what it says here. So if you turn the page, the other side of the page, it tells us something which makes it a little bit easier to follow. We're going to have a class that we're going to go into all this in much more detail a little bit later, maybe in a few weeks from now. But this is a Gemara that talks about the passing of a tzaddik. And the part that's underlined, let's read just those lines. The Gemara brings a certain verse and said, this verse teaches us, this day is included here to teach you that the death of the righteous, when a tzaddik passes away, it's equivalent to the burning of the house of our Hashem. In other words, we all know that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. That's Hashem's home. When a tzaddik passes away, it's equivalent to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So what do we derive from that? If the passing of a tzaddik is like the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, then the life of a tzaddik and everything the tzaddik does and performs is like the Beis Hamikdash. So with the Beis Hamikdash, we also have two things. Number one, it was a place that we had to have the highest level of respect. There's so many laws of how and what way you're allowed to enter the Beis Hamikdash. You weren't allowed to wear leather shoes. You weren't allowed to use it as a shortcut. There's a long list of things. And in fact, a person who was impure because he touched a dead body or any other kind of impurity wasn't allowed to enter. And there's certain situations where entering as an impure person in the Beis Hamikdash could be punishable by death because it's a holy place You have to enter in a proper way. That's the fear and the awe of the Beis Hamikdash, the respect. On the other hand, the Beis Hamikdash is a place that we're all attached to it. In the times of the Beis Hamikdash, how often do people go to the Beis Hamikdash? What? 3 times a year. And by the way, it wasn't just a nice thing to do. It was an obligation. It was a mitzvah, which means it was a commandment like all other commandments that you must visit 3 times a year. And if you think for a moment, in those days, they didn't have jets and airplanes and cars. So how did they travel? Not even by horse and wagon, because the mitzvah was to go by foot. Try to think how time-consuming it was to go to the Beis Hamikdash and back 3 times a year by foot. I mean, if you live next door to Yerushalayim, okay, not a big deal. But if you live anyplace else in Israel, a week away, 2 weeks walking from Israel, that means you spend weeks walking to and weeks walking back home for Sukkot, and then you did it again for Pesach, then you did it again for Shvat. So our whole life in those days revolved around the Beis Hamikdash very much. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Did they actually spend the Chagim like in the Beis Hamikdash, or they just went there?
They spent it in Yerushalayim, but they went there to bring the sacrifices, and every day they visited the Beis Hamikdash.
They had to be in Yerushalayim.
Right. When we say the Chagim, we mean Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. These 3 Chagim. Yeah.
Did Yerushalayim expand?
In those days, we don't find that it expanded, but there's a discussion about this in Gemara, where the Gemara talks about how many people lived in Israel in general. And one of the sages said, but it's such a small place. How could have so many people ever lived in such a place? And the Gemara says, when the people were living there, the land was sort of contained more. After the Jews left the country, and it compares it to the skin of a deer. It's another discussion, that it actually, in a sense, became smaller. I don't know what it means physically or metaphorically, but in a way that it definitely was something miraculous that so many Jews could be in such a small area 3 times a year. But we see from this that there's a mitzvah to attach yourself to the Beis Hamikdash. So too with the tzaddik, it's not only appropriate to keep your distance and have respect, but it's also the opposite, to be connected. So that's why we have on page 13 these quotes. Number 1 is the one I just showed you. Whoever connects himself to a Torah scholar is like cleaving onto the Shekhinah. Number 3, where it says whoever benefits and has pleasure from a meal that Torah scholars are there, it's like deriving benefit and pleasure from the Shekhinah. Shekhinah is the divine presence. And in fact, there's another thing where it says in Halacha that one is obligated to see his Rebbe, to visit his Rebbe on the holidays, because just like we used to visit the Beis Hamikdash, we should be visiting our Rebbe, because it's all the same idea. The Beis Hamikdash is a place where godliness was more revealed, and a tzaddik is a person where godliness is more revealed within him. So this is called dveikos. This is attachment to the Torah scholar. And these are the 2 things. Number 12 is about the respect and the honor and the awe, and I stay at a distance, respectful distance. And this is about attaching ourselves to a Torah scholar. And like I said, there are more details to this. I'm sure there are a lot of questions about this. And in a few short weeks, we're going to be having a class on the subject. Right now, I'd like to go to a new Mishnah. So if everybody can look in their booklet, the first few pages are the Mishnah. So let's look for Mishnah 11. It's over here, Mishnah 11. Rabbi Yeshua says, there are 3 things. He uses the term, it drives a person out of this world. It means it really sort of makes a person lose their merits and their pleasure and their true life in this world. What are the 3 things? One is the evil eye. A person who has an eye that he always sees bad in others and everything in life. His life is really not a life. He's always seeing the negative in everything. the evil inclination, which attracts the person to everything that's negative, and he has no control, and he's constantly giving in to his desires and all these things that come up that distract him from going in the right direction, the right path. And the third thing is hatred of others, someone who hates other people. So the first two things we talked about in Pirkei Avos earlier, and now we'll talk about the third thing, about hate. I hate to talk about the subject, but we have no choice. Yeah. This is my master copy, but you can use it for the class, and I'll take it back from you to make copies for it. Who else doesn't have a copy? Anyone that needs a copy didn't get a copy? So we need 2 more copies. You also don't have a copy? 4 more copies? 5 more copies? Okay. Okay, we'll try to have it ready for next week in Mitzvah Hashem. Next time we have this class. In the meantime, take this. We're going to be doing page 14. So again, having hate towards another person, we all understand it's not a good character trait. But this is not just simply not such a good character trait. It's much more severe than that. It's one of the 365 commandments of the Torah, where it says, do not hate another. Here it is on top of the page. Those words are from the Torah. It says, do not hate your brother in your heart. And we can apply the same principle we applied before. How could you not hate? Someone did something to me. They really caused me a lot of suffering. And I feel hate towards them. So remember we said in class that, wait a second, to change my heart, it's not so easy. But what I could do is not to do an act of hate, not to speak hateful. And I can also stop myself from entertaining thoughts of hate. And then I won't consciously feel hate in my heart. What's doing beneath the surface, inside my guts, and I hate this person, that's harder to change. That's deep inside. Internal things are harder to change. But we can definitely work on our thought, speech, and action. Not to act in a hateful way, and not to speak words of hate, and not to even entertain. If I have thoughts of hate, how much I hate this person, instead of entertaining those thoughts, to immediately stop myself and disconnect and go on to a different subject like we spoke about. Push it away with 2 hands. So this is something which is considered extremely fundamental in Torah. In fact, it says this is the reason why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. In the words of Gemara, it's number 2 on the list, where it says sinas chinam, which means unfounded hate, hate that is baseless hate. So the Gemara tells us that the temple was destroyed twice, the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, people were worshiping idols, people were violating Torah in one way or another. But in the times of the second temple, they weren't worshiping idols, they weren't doing those things, and yet it was destroyed. In fact, people were even studying Torah. It was destroyed because mainly there was a lot of hate between people. And the Gemara refers to it as baseless hate, like hate almost without a real solid reason for one hating the other. We'll soon explain how that makes sense. But for this, we have the famous story in Gemara that says this was the last straw that broke the camel's back that led to the actual destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, which is no simple matter. Because when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, it wasn't just destroying a building, which in itself is something very tragic. But hundreds and thousands and perhaps millions of men, women, and children were massacred, were killed. And it came as a result of the hate. What was the story? There was a man who was making a party, and apparently this person was a prominent person in the community. He made a big party for some reason or other. And in those days, they didn't send invitations like today, but this guy sent a messenger to go knock on the door of your house and say, hello, you are invited to come to this party. And he made a little mistake. What was the mistake? This man had a close friend whose name was Kamsa. He had an enemy whose name was Bar Kamsa. And he said, go invite my friend, Kamsa. So he made a little teeny mistake. What was the mistake? He invited the enemy instead of the friend, Bar Kamsa. The party begins, they're getting ready. He's walking through, greeting the guest. And who does he see sitting by the table? His arch enemy. So what are you doing here? He says, I came because I got an invitation. Your messenger came to me and invited me. So it was a mistake. Leave right now. He said, please don't embarrass me in public. Let me stay here. I'll pay you for all the food that I eat. No, I want you to leave right now. So he says, I promise you, I'll pay you for half of the expenses of the whole meal. No, I want you to leave right now. So he said, I promise you, I'll pay you for all the expenses of the entire meal, for everything. Just don't humiliate me. After he walked over, he grabbed him by the collar and he dragged him out of the room.
He what?
He pulled him out of the room like a dog. They schlepped him out. Of course, he was humiliated. He was furious. And then he said, there were people there, there were rabbis there, and nobody stopped him. I'll teach them a lesson. And he went to the Roman emperor and he said, listen, I'm a Jew. I'm one of them. I know what's going on. They're planning a revolution against you. And I can prove it. There's more details to the story, how he was able to convince the king that the Jews are planning a revolution. He did a number of underhanded things. But eventually he convinced the king, the Roman emperor, and then he sent an army, destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and death to tens and hundreds of thousands of people. If you think of it, what happened here? Number one, hate. He hated someone and therefore he threw him out. Number two, you embarrassed someone in public. Number three, this person took revenge. These are all three horrible character traits. And they all came together, and that's what led to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So we see from this that hate is a negative character trait. And of course, he said, look, there were people there, rabbis, and nobody stood up for me. Nobody protected me. Nobody told them something wrong. That's another negative thing. How come nobody stopped him and said, what are you doing? This is inappropriate. Perhaps if somebody would have sort of be there to defend him, he wouldn't feel so humiliated, like people are on my side. So everything together led to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And therefore, it's considered such a negative thing. The only question is, what does this mean, sinas chinam, hate that's unfounded? Why would one person hate another person for no reason? You hate someone because they hurt you. They hurt you financially, they hurt you physically, or in this case, they humiliated him. Obviously, they were in a fight from before, but what does it mean people hate each other for no reason? Doesn't make any sense. What?
Jealousy.
Jealousy. That's the answer. Hate that's based on jealousy is a hate without a reason. In other words, if you hate me because I hurt you, I can walk over and say, please forgive me. I will never do it again. I really feel sorry. I apologize. You can smooth things out. But if you hate me because I'm successful, because I'm happy, because I'm healthy, because I have something good, what am I supposed to do? Disappear? There's nothing you can do. So that hate is the worst kind of hate because there's nothing you can do to sort of rectify it. You can't reconcile anything because there's nothing to reconcile. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not hurting him. You're not even thinking of hurting him. It's just jealousy. I'm jealous that you're so successful. I'm jealous you have something I don't have, or you have something more than what I have. So these are character traits that we have to be extremely, extremely careful with, because these are character traits that they make a person become so angry. By the way, anger is another character trait we saw here, that these things lead to destruction and to murder and to, unfortunately, many other things. Do you have another example, anyone? Where do we find that jealousy led to murder? In the Torah itself, there's a story. Cain and Hevel. One of the first stories in the Torah. Two brothers, both are doing their own thing. He didn't bother him. He did his thing. He brought a sacrifice to Hashem. And he brought a sacrifice to Hashem. But his brother's sacrifice was accepted. He was so jealous, he got angry and he killed him. Why did he deserve to be killed? I didn't do anything to you. That's jealousy. Yeah.
The other brothers wasn't accepted. I forgot the story behind it.
Right. They both brought a sacrifice. And he saw, I guess, from the way the flames were rising, that his sacrifice was accepted by Hashem. And Cain, the murderer, didn't see that his sacrifice was being accepted. Actually, there's a reason for that. It said that when he brought a sacrifice, he said to himself, anyway, this is going to be wasted, so why bring something that's a good part of the product? I'll bring the leftovers. The other brother did the opposite. This is for Hashem. He brought the best that he had. But at the end, he was jealous. His is accepted. Why not? They say that if there are two people standing next to each other, and one person is taller than the other, and you feel very uncomfortable that this person is taller than me, there's two ways you can change it. One is you climb up on a chair and you're taller than them, or get equal to them. What if you're too lazy to do that? There's another way. You knock them down on the floor, and now they're laying on the floor, and you're taller than them, higher than them. So basically, figuratively speaking, it means that if someone has more than me, what do? I hate them, and I destroy them, and I want to put them down, and then I'll be better off than them. So this is, of course, an extremely negative character trait, and that's why it says, these are the three things that they drive a person out of this world. It destroys a person's life. It makes him destructive, and it makes him lead a very negative life, to chas v'shalom, have hate.
The three things were jealousy.
The three things? No. One was a yetzer hara, meaning person who is obsessed with, is sort of in control of his impulses. His desires for all sorts of physical pleasure control him. The second one was ayin hara, bad eye, which means he looks at people and things and always sees the bad in it. That's one interpretation. There's more. Looks at the bad, sees the bad in it. So everything is negative. Everything is bad. Never can enjoy life because he always sees something wrong with people, with his own children, with his spouse, with his work.
The third one was jealousy.
What?
Third one was jealousy.
Third one was not jealousy, but hate. I just said that there's a hate that comes from jealousy. Any kind of hate is no good. But there's a hate that comes, it's based on, or it's an outcome of jealousy.
So the third one is specifically the hate that's from jealousy?
No, the third one is hate.
Hate.
All hate. The whole family of hate.
And those are the three things
That it's used the term, it drives a person out of this world, means it doesn't let a person have a happy, pleasurable life. Yeah.
Is it still considered evil eye if you recognize something and you're like, okay, well, wow, that's really cool, but it's fascinating, or just, I don't know how to explain it, but then it ends up like getting ruined, and then
You mean, you're talking about ayin hara?
yeah.
I think that's something else from what he's talking about here when he says evil eye, even though they translate it the same way, but that's not what he means. And ayin hara, yes, it means there's such a thing that you shouldn't sort of talk that way about something good that you see, because that might cause damage. Like it says in Chumash, that when God wanted to count the Jewish people, he told Moshe, don't count the people, count coins. Every person should give a coin and count the coins. You count the people and say, wow, there's 600,000 people. So that's, it might trigger something, some sort of a, maybe like a prosecuting angel say, do they really deserve to have 600,000 people? And bring up arguments to, God forbid, that hurts. So we're not so loud about that. That's what ayin hara is. But I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think he's talking more about a negative eye. You see things and people and whatever happens in the world in a negative way.
Mhm.
The Rebbe teaches us something incredible. And something happens, the craziest things happen. He's going to find the positive dot in it and let that become like the thing to focus on. And then there are people that have the opposite. They can have a lot of positive things happening, and there's one dot that's negative, and that becomes the dot to focus on. And they're sad, and they're upset, and they're angry because they have one dot. Sometimes a family goes out on a trip. Everybody's together. and you're enjoying yourself. And one person, something happened, they lost something, they dropped something. Or as the story goes, we had a beautiful meal, but they didn't have ketchup. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is a waste of time. This is crazy. I never want to go back here again. And there are people like that. It means that the little thing that went wrong, if you think of it in comparison to the big picture, it's nothing. But that little thing with the negative, there's something like a certain magnet inside that gets attracted to the negative. And that's what I focus on. And that doesn't let a person live and enjoy life. We should learn to look at everything and find the positive point in it. And that'll bring joy and simcha to a person. Actually, as a Jew and as a religious Jew, and we know everything comes from Hashem, there has to be something positive in everything, and that's what we should be looking for. I think I mentioned this once. I once went to do an MRI. You all know what an MRI is, right?
I know.
What?
I do.
You do?
I know what I am.
Yeah, everybody knows MRI. But when I walked in, the doctor says to me, you know, this is the state-of-the-art machine. This is incredible. This is a machine that it searches and looks for anything that might be not right until he finds it. I'm thinking, yeah, there's some people like that. They look and they search. Like, wait, maybe it's a little dot. Ah, there it is. And pull it out. So with health, it's a good thing to find. But in getting along with other people, it doesn't work so well. Okay, that's Mishnah 11. And now we come to Mishnah 12. We don't really have time to do Mishnah 12. There's only 1 minute left. So I guess we'll stop here. And wish everybody a happy Shabbos. What?
Get used to it. It's every time like this.
I didn't realize there was only 1 minute left.
Well, there's something wrong with, the
No,
clock.
I'm happy. Yeah, but
Yes.
it showed that there was something interesting happening.
Well, Hashem, okay. Who's Chava Krimko? Are you here? No.